Welcome to Unit 2, Chapter 4, Measurement Systems. In these sets of videos, I will be going over all of the examples you have in your book so that you can pause and go over them at your own speed and maybe get to understand the concepts a little bit easier. So let's get started with exercise 4-1, question 1. And it says, as the instructions for all of these questions, change the following ingredients to their decimal equivalent and then round them off to two decimal places where necessary. Now, basically what that means is you have to round them off to two decimal places where necessary. So again, if your unrounded answer has 3 or more decimals, you must round it to 2 decimal places. If, of course, your final answer ends up being, or your initial answer ends up being a whole number, or a number with only 1 or 2 decimal places, then there will be no rounding necessary. Let's take a look at our first example. We have 3 pounds and 8 ounces. We want to convert this into its decimal equivalent in pounds. And as we've been talking about in class, if we have 3 whole pounds over here, we will always have 3 whole pounds in our final answer. This is equal to 3 pounds. This is equal to 3 pounds. Anything on the left side of the decimal point is a whole number. Now we have to deal with the 8 ounces. And the way we do that is by knowing what our relationship is and what we do with it. And in this case, we're going to take 8 and divide it by 16 because there are 16 ounces in 1 pound. That's our relationship between ounces and pounds. And 8 divided by 16 gives us decimal 5. Therefore, we get a final answer of 3.5 pounds. No rounding necessary here. There's only one decimal number. Let's move on to the next question. Exactly like the same, except for different numbers. We have 12 pounds, 12 ounces. We want to convert it into its decimal equivalent in pounds. The no-brainer, we're going to have 12 whole pounds, whether we express it in pounds and ounces or in decimal pounds. So now all we have left is to deal with the 12 ounces. And like the question before this, we are going to divide 12 by 16 because there are 16 ounces in 1 pound. And that gives us decimal 75. Our final answer, 12.75. No rounding needed. It's already at 2 decimal places. Next question, 7 pounds and 1 ounce. Same thing. We are going to have 7 whole pounds. We will divide the 1 ounce that we have by the 16 ounces there are in 1 pound, and we get decimal 0.625. We definitely need to round this because it has 4 decimal places. So we will go and take a look at the second decimal number, 6. The number following it is only a 2, not enough to change anything. So we get rid of the 2 and the 5. Our final rounded answer is 7.06 pounds. Let's get into something a little bit easier with a metric system. We have 2 kilograms and 300 grams. Exact same thing here. If we have 2 kilograms over here on this side, we are going to have 2 kilograms here. Yes, 2 kilograms. And now we have to settle with the 330 grams, and we're going to divide this by 1,000 grams because that's how many there are in a kilogram. 1,000 grams equals 1 kilogram. And 330 divided by 1,000 gives us decimal 330. So we drop the 0 because we need to round to 2 decimal places, although the 0 would not change the value of the number. Our final answer in this case is 2.33 kilograms. We have a whole bunch of gram questions here, and it's all the same thing. We're going to keep the whole number of kilograms, and then we will divide the amount of grams we have by 1,000. Again, because there are 1,000 grams in a kilogram, and then round off to 2 decimal places where those are necessary. So we get these answers that you see. If this is going too fast for you, don't worry. You can always pause this or rewind it, and you can take a look at what's going on. It's all been done by the same thing. Whole kilograms will be whole kilograms, and then we divide the grams by the amount of grams there are in a kilogram. Our next answer, and as you can see here, these last 2 examples for the rounding, 98 grams divided by 1,000 is decimal 0.98, and that will round off to 1 decimal 0, or 1 if we drop the 0 because of the value. So that final answer becomes 2 decimal 1. Another example where even though we've been asked to round to 2 decimal places, the final answer only ends up with 1 decimal place. And in the next one, 5 U.S. quarts and 24 ounces is needed to be converted to its decimal equivalent in U.S. quarts. Again, the no-brainer, 5 whole U.S. quarts. Now we need to deal with the 24 ounces. How many ounces are there in a U.S. quart? That's the relationship we need to know. If you don't, take a look at that chart that we give you. But there are 32 ounces in a U.S. quart. And if we divide 24 by those 32 ounces, we get decimal 75. So a final answer of 5.75 U.S. quarts is equal to 5 U.S. quarts and 24 ounces. Up next, 2 imperial pints and 12 ounces. Still going to have 2 imperial pints. And then we're going to deal with the 12 ounces. We need to be aware of that relationship. And in this case, there are 20 ounces in an imperial pint. So 12 divided by 20 is equal to decimal 6. Our final answer here becomes 2.6 imperial pints. 1 gallon and 5 pints. Here's an example where it does not matter if it's a US or imperial gallon because we're not talking about ounces. We are just talking about gallons and pints, and they're the same in both US and imperial, so we only have to worry about how many pints are there in a gallon because the no-brainer part still exists. We'll have 1 whole gallon, then we'll take the 5 pints we have and divide it by 8 because there are 8 pints in a gallon, and that gives us decimal 625. So we get an unrounded answer of 1.625 gallons, but we need to round this off to 2 decimal places. And again, if we look at our second decimal, which is a number 2, we look, the next one over is 5, so that's enough to change the 2 to a 3. Our final answer ends up being 1.63 gallons rounded. Up next, 3 US gallons and 100 ounces needs to be converted to its decimal equivalent in US gallons. Doesn't change. We're going to have 3 whole US gallons. Now we need to know how many ounces there are in a US gallon, and that is 128. And 120 or 100 divided by 128, the amount of ounces in a US gallon, gives us an unrounded answer of decimal 78125. So there's our unrounded answer, but of course we need to round to 2 decimal places, and we end up with a final answer of 3.78 US gallons. Next up is 4 gallons and 3 quarts. US or imperial? Doesn't matter. We're not talking about ounces. So we're going to have 4 whole gallons. We need to know the relationship between quarts, and there are 4 quarts per gallon. So we'll take our 3 divided by the 4 quarts, and our final answer is 4.5 gallons. 3 imperial gallons and 100 ounces, and we want to convert that into its equivalent in imperial gallons. Still going to be 3 whole imperial gallons no matter which way you look at it. And now we deal with the 100 ounces. We'll divide that by 160 because there are 160 ounces in an imperial gallon. That gives us decimal 625. So an unrounded answer, 3.625 imperial gallons. Rounded off to 3 decimal places, we get rounded off to 2 decimal places, we get 3.63 imperial gallons. So there's how these are done. The most important thing to remember, as always, is what our relationships are to the 2 units of measure that we are using. And that's where studying that chart that will be included for your test will come in very handy. Please don't wait for the first time you look at it to be during the test. It will just give you more frustrations than anything.